mean, I'm a nurse, I work at Boston Medical Center. I'm very aware of the opioid crisis that we're dealing with. Since the close of Long Island, we've suffered a great deal with housing, treatment, professional treatments for these people. I care for them, I treat them on a daily basis. The Narcan, everything. I applaud everyone that's in with this. But the point of this whole thing is, I applaud you for working for a registered, sober house. That's what we need. We need them to be regulated. We need urines. We need people to have to, when they get punished for something, I can't think of it, consequences. We need strict, like I do with BMC. They come in for urine toxins. We have people that come in, hundreds of prescriptions. It's in the paper all the time we dole out with opioids. They're on a strict, we do toxoid panels. We have very strict rules. These sober homes that they call serenity homes or peace homes or God, they're abusing these people that are disabled. They're disabled, and people are preying on them, as Mr. Palmucci said. Yes, we know that, but the point is, we want to prevent our children dying. We want to prevent this. We want these places regulated, like the 5 that are in Quincy are regulated. How many others do we don't even know how many others there are, because they're not regulated. So it's a bunch of baloney. The parking, the sanitation, whatever. But a big, huge solution to this whole thing would be to fix the damn bridge. Who's going to pay, Quincy or Boston? That was an appropriate place. It was regulated. They were monitored by healthcare professionals. It was important.
Councillor Harris was just sitting there like 5 minutes ago, the Ward 1 councillor. It would have been great if he was here to
Well,
hear you say that.
I'm passionate. I take care of them. I love them. They're me. I connect. And they need to be regulated. Part of the disease is manipulation. Correct. That's part. They're going to relapse. But we have kids and children. We need to protect from these consequences of the disease. Study about the disease of addiction. Study about it. It's not these people and they throw and they smoke and they do this. They're people. They have a disease, just like hypertension, diabetes. They're addicts, and it sucks. No one wants to be one, but people are them, and we need to regulate these sober houses and to meet their needs. That's true. Amen. Amen.
And how can you regulate it? There's no one there managing it. How are these people getting help if there's no one there to help them?
That's a good question. The only way that it can be regulated has to come from the state level in order to be fair and consistent across the state. You can't have a patchwork of laws in each community having their own regulations.
Both on the bills.
It has to come from the state.
Both on the bills. That's regulatory. It's voluntary unless it's put into action.
That's exactly right. I would like nothing more than to be able to regulate these myself. We just don't have that ability.
I think personally there should be. You know what I mean? Like Quincy drug.
I want to hear from more of the neighbors. We'll give you some closing remarks at the end, okay? All right. Go ahead, boss.
Thank you. I'm John Affleck. I live at 152 Gardner Road. I read the zoning code, and there is some clauses about occupations in the home, running a business from the home. As this gentleman said, clearly this is a business. And there are restrictions around the visible use of a single-family property as a business. Now, perhaps they're not in violation of that yet, but I'd like your comment about if there is proof of an occupation, visible proof, what's the remedy that the city has in that case?
So this flows downhill from the federal statute, which trumps the state statute.
So you agree there is a statute in place that could restrict the use of the home?
In the local ordinance, but no local ordinance can regulate these ADF facilities according to federal law.
Thank you.
But shouldn't they be regulated? Shouldn't someone have to be managing them?
Yes.
In order for them to
Yes.
do it?
Yes.
We totally agree. We are totally in agreement.
The folks who run the good sober houses agree as well.
Are there curfews in here? I mean, are the people able to go and come as they want? Is there any sort of people managing to see what they're bringing in?
federal legislature that open
The way I look at it, Gardner Road, it's a one-family neighbourhood. It's one family that's living there. I think the point this guy is trying to make is, right now there's, I believe, 15 people living in that house. So that's 15 different people with different names, different social security numbers. So we can class them as 15 different families living in that house in a one-family neighbourhood. Now, to me, if that's the case, it should be a rooming house. Is there enough bedrooms there to have 15 different families living there?
So,
and we know the regulations that you're supposed to have.
I would love to regulate them as a rooming house. The federal law specifically does not allow communities to regulate these, and you have to treat them like a single-family house, not unlike the one that you live in.
We've been down this road before, and we're happy to.
Hold on.
We're happy to go down because that's actually a really good. I'm sorry, I'm addressing Mr. Affleck. I think that's actually a very valid point. Jay's an administrator. He speaks from the black and the white. There is no gray. Is there a gray that the city can come up with that can perhaps throw in some regulatory processes here that might make sense? We're 100% open to giving that a shot. We've tried it before. Lawyers have said you're going to get tossed, you're going to get sued, but that doesn't mean we can't try.
Here's a hypothetical. What if, for example, they stop taking in recovering addicts and just run it as a rooming house?
Then we can regulate it because they're no longer covered by the American Disabilities Act.
I just said, again, I just repeat that. We're open to going down this road, once again, about seeing what we can do, getting with our lawyers, getting with the Inspectional Services Department, getting with the state folks, and seeing if there are, I don't want to use the word loopholes, but remedies that we may be able to find. I can't guarantee success. I can't guarantee we'll even get out of the box. But we're absolutely happy to work with the neighborhood.
American Disabilities Act. How come there is no guidelines to that? There's no one in-house that has to stay there and to watch this on.
Because the way it came down is the federal court case that went up, it said folks in sober houses qualify under the ADA, right? The Americans with Disabilities Act. That was it. So, and that just meant that now under the ADA, under the federal fair housing and the ADA, the municipality cannot regulate them. So what they did is they took and this isn't just Quincy, it's not Massachusetts, it's the entire country. They just took us out at the knees. We're the direct representatives of you. We hear from you. We would love to, we would love to shut these places down if there are problems. If they're being run well, we'd like to work with the operators and make sure that there's harmony in the neighborhood. But if they're not, if they're, like this woman said, this guy who's in it for the money, who's not in it to actually heal people and get them better, who's set up shop in your neighborhood, I would love to go up there with a sledgehammer and just shut the place down.
It sounds like there need to be more legal challenges, more legal precedents.
Yeah. One of the other things that we had that I had raised with the folks in the Goddard, Bennington neighborhood, which we tried to kind of put in place, the city of Quincy, and this was an ordinance that Councillor Laforest and I had worked on in past, like 7 years ago, that says if you have an unruly house, and this was really to target absentee landlords, but it says if you have an unruly house in the city of Quincy, and within 30, 60 days you have a certain number of police calls that result either in arrests or they're kind of founded, like it's a noise complaint, police go out there, they hear the noise, that the chief of police can put in place a paid police detail to sit in front of the house 24 hours a day with the purpose of keeping the peace. And then we add that to their tax bill because we did it once and the guy didn't pay and they said, well, we can't do that anymore. So we changed it, we added to the tax bill. We've tried to do that. It didn't, the number of calls that we were getting from those houses weren't enough to trigger the, I think on Gardner Road we're gonna have a different situation. I think, this fella's here, that's a world of difference than where you guys are at, right?
The question is, who decides who goes into this house on Gardner Road? Yeah. What kind
Beats the hell out of me. Yeah.
And do they have any other offenses behind them? Are there any registered offenders in there? Exactly. There's children in this neighborhood.
Well, they would, if there's sex offenders, they have other laws by which they have to
so they're not
live.
Allowed
they would.
Who's monitoring who's going in? How do we know?
How do we know there are no sex offenders?
Well, I mean, same as we don't know there's no sex offenders who live in your house. I mean, they have an obligation that they have to register. If they don't, they get locked up.
What is the notification requirement for sex offenders? This is such a transient thing.
Do you-
There are people coming through. Does anybody know?
Officer Welby? Officer Welby? What's the sex offender registry obligation? They have to register at the police station where they live and where they work, correct?
Exactly.
Within how many days are we going to get them?
That I don't know.
It's
If this is a
it's a small window. No, it's a small window.
10 days.
10 days.
So they're supposed to notify where they're moving from, the city that they're moving to, and those cities are supposed to communicate with each other. Once they move to the city of Quincy, they have 10 days to register. When I called the Quincy police just to kind of check, as the mother of young children, he said, there is no sober house on Gardner Road. I said, I disagree. I told him, and he said, let me check. We checked around the other detectives, and nobody knew of one. And I said, does that mean you don't know if there's any sex offenders living on Gardner Road? He said, I can only tell you that there's no level 3s. How could he?
Something bad to happen. I applaud you. I really, really do. I have a cousin who died of a heroin overdose. Tried to get help, couldn't get help. So I applaud you. But the problem is that we have these absentee landlords, like I live across the street from one, who has multiple issues, has had multiple issues in the past with all the neighbors, multiple police calls, and the folks that live in this sober unit, house, whatever you want to call it now, haven't been a problem. Yes, parking is an issue, absolutely. But why don't we all know what is happening with sex offenders? We can't find out. We have young kids. I have a teenage daughter. I'm a single woman. I'm a widow. I have nobody to help me. My neighbors are having a baby. What can we do about this? It sounds like we can't regulate the houses that are already here. So that being said, like the woman over there said, can't we put some supervision in place by law? Can't we have one of this gentleman in these houses to regulate this stuff? And the ones that don't, can't we stop it?
Yeah.
Can't we stop this from happening?
Jay, you want to take that? I mean, I think the answer is no.
Yeah, right, but to the point, like, literally, we had somebody die of an overdose in
that
a different unit than the sober house. And how is that an allowable environment for the people who are trying to recover above? Like,
Exactly.
how does that make them feel? Like, if they're trying to get clean, but somebody else below them is using and dying, and like, that is not an environment that is...
It's not a real sober
Yeah,
house.
this is just like, it's unreal.
It's happening. It's happening. It's happening.
Any other question?
Right here, Brian. Brian?
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me. I think most people here would agree that, well, let me start it a different way. You guys seem very detached from this. Okay? All of you guys.
From the city?
From the city. Let me finish, okay? We just found out now that this place has been operating since December. I live on the other side of Gardner Road. Okay? We really need to feel comfortable that you guys are in the game and you're going to do whatever you can within the confines. Now, Brian, maybe that seems ridiculous.
No, I mean, I honestly find that a little bit insulting to say that I'm detached because I didn't know that the house opened up in December.
Let me just say, the letter you sent out was horrible, okay? And why should we find out now what's going on in our own neighborhood for the last 6 months?
How do I know? I did not know. They don't have to register with the city. As I told you, if I knew there was a sober house, I would have told you.
How naive are we that we're going to accept that you tell us there were no sober houses in the city and that you weren't?
I didn't say that.
Okay. You think this was okay? You think the communication was okay?
Sir, I scheduled a meeting to get together to discuss this as soon as I found out about it.
This place opened in December.
I didn't say that. I didn't know it opened in December.
You should have then.
I should have?
I think the problem is when you call
I live on 191 and I didn't know it.
He lived next door, he didn't know
Right
it.
across the street.
The answer was that they didn't have a sober house on their list in that area. I don't think it was that they don't have any sober houses on the list. So I think, you know, being detached, we have no way of knowing.
If I could walk out of here tonight and feel, and I'm sorry that the mayor's representative is not here, to feel that all you guys are in unison to do the very best possible work you can do to keep us aware and to protect us.
I think that's what Brian did today.
Okay, but this is the last 2 weeks. I didn't know about this meeting until the other day when my neighbor came by. and said there's gonna be a meeting, and did you get the letter? And yeah, I read the letter. The way the letter was written, it was gonna be a general conversation about these houses.
And it is a general conversation.
I'm sorry
if the letter was confusing
we're here because we
didn't
have
clearly state what the issue was.
There's a specific situation here that we didn't know about until we got this thing just a few days ago.
Okay.
Okay? So, I think a lot of people in this room are going to share my sentiment that we didn't have enough information fast enough, and that maybe not enough was done to try to protect us and to keep us informed of what was going on.
So I'm happy to do anything that you think is reasonable for me to protect you. Tell me what more you want me to do, and I'm happy to try and do it.
I'm not you. I'm not.
No, but you're saying I'm not meeting your expectation. I'm just asking.
No,
tell me what it is, and I'll do it.
I want to know more about what's going on.
Okay.
I want to know more about what's going on. I want to know what's being done to enforce the laws that exist already that we can work with.
Okay. And I think Jay can speak to that.
Okay. And there are things you can do that will be helpful, okay? And there's people in here that are going to be very upset coming around the next electoral session.
Listen, I'm not...
Okay. There's a lot of people going to be upset about this, and it's because we're not being well informed of what's going on.
I found out, as soon as I found out the sober house was opening, because neighbors called me. This gentleman right here said he lives next door. He didn't know it was there. I didn't know it was there until folks started calling me. That's the whole problem with the sober house.
Someone in the city of Quincy knew that they were going to put a sober house.
No.
Brian, what makes it sober house?
Jay's been over a little bit. He's talked about. I think this gentleman over here raised a great point about communication. It's certainly something the city's willing to do with the regulated sober houses. To maybe when someone new moves into a neighborhood in the city, usually they get a packet from the city. Has all sorts of phone numbers, those sorts of things, who to call, information about the city, that sort of thing. We'd be happy to coordinate, I think, with the regular. I know there's a separate question here, what we knew and when we knew it. But I think we're certainly happy to do something along those lines, sort of tailor a communication program between the sober houses and the community, the ones that are regulated, to get everybody on the same page, to answer some of those concerns, to address some of those questions, and get everybody to a place where they're as comfortable as they possibly can when it comes to the regulated. The gentleman raised the question of someone in the city had to have known. Sir, you're not going to believe it, we didn't. These things.
So how do you establish a house like that, right?
As Mr. Duca has mentioned, this is a protected class under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Therefore, there's no regulatory process. He mentioned a specific case a long time ago. The city of Chelsea tried to go into a building and make them put sprinklers in, which we would do in any building, any rooming house, any multifamily unit, building. The city would go in and say, you've got X amount of people in here. You've got to have a sprinkler system in, or these people are out of here. The city of Chelsea tried to do that, and the court said, you can't.
Yeah.
So, federal law right now, in this particular case, is not on our side.
Sounds like it's not there. What am I doing here?
The issue at the state level, that is before the State House, I think is a great starting point. I think looking at what the city can do. Are there gray areas that we can find to try something? I think we're open to that. But as it stands right now, someone could come in tomorrow, open up a sober living home, and not tell us all. It's not the right way to do it. It's going to cause problems.
That house doesn't belong in Gardner Road, period. That house doesn't belong. You pay too much taxes in this city. That house is still. That house owns the neighborhood already.
I don't disagree.
That house is still owned by two people, right? Let's go, guys.
I'll be here all night.
Can I say something? That house is still owned by two individuals, correct? Does anybody know that? On the city records, that house is still owned by two individuals.
Okay.
Now, they obviously made an agreement with this organization to rent that place out as a sober house. And, I mean, I saw the activity, I was wondering too, but I don't think anybody else in the neighborhood knew
anything about that. But they made an agreement with this sober house organization or whoever to rent out this place. So the city has no record of this whatsoever. There's no notification to anybody in the city about that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there's not much we can do about it. I'd like to take a ride over to Newton and visit the person that owns this house and give a piece of my mind, but you can't do that.
These facilities are in a lot of communities.
What's that?
Brian,
Hold on one second.
that lady's out of
Brian,
hand.
hold on, Brian, do you want to, do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
No, this lady right there.
I understand who you want me to call in. I've asked.
It's been 15 minutes, she's out of
I
hand.
don't know if I want to jump into it, but I will. My name is Brian Murphy. I live up in Bryant Ward 4 on Birchall Street. And I'm also on the board of directors of MASH. I was one of the original founders of MASH, myself and Joe, 10 years ago. In 2007, there was 8 of us who owned sober houses around the state, mostly in this part of the state, that wanted to band together and mostly to separate ourselves from the poorly run sober houses that were being placed in poor places also. And our recommendation 10 years ago to anybody who was thinking about opening up a sober house was to be careful, be respectful of the neighborhood that you're looking at, the houses that you're looking at. Look for multiple addresses in an environment that doesn't have houses right next door to it and has adequate parking and notify the town. Although, the reason that MASH houses, you can't really regulate them, and MASH is a DPH-funded organization now. From 2007 to now, it took 10 years to get the state involved to the point where they're giving us some funding, starting to certify them. But the reason they're only certifying them is because the state did a study and they would have banged heads with federal law and didn't want to go there because of the American Families and Disabilities Act. So the next best thing was to at least try to get them to voluntarily certify themselves, and as a carrot to do that, any house that receives any kind of, or any program, say the Social Halfway House or any detox that receives any federal or state funding, the court systems, the parole board, any type of state or federal locally run organization that receives any type of funding can't send anybody to a house that isn't certified. So, and they were thinking of maybe cutting off the money supply to the fully run houses that didn't want to stand up and be recognized. Now, having said that, Joseph and I have run our houses for almost 12 years now. And I know it's just outside of your district, but I remember a conversation we had 5 years ago when we were talking about sober housing, and I said, I have a house up on Quarry Street. He said, really? He said, I didn't, there's never been any, the city knows we're there. We have a house in Weymouth, the city knows we're there. We've had community meetings in each city. We had a house down in Greenleaf Street that we tried to buy rooming houses that already had lodging house licenses. We thought that was kind of logical. Margaret had a community meeting. We told them what we were doing there. So we were trying to keep the community involved. But, Joe, our houses, we have multi-families, a duplex, 5 people on one side, 5 people on the other side. Although it's 1 person or 2 people over the typical zoning regulation, it's not overcrowded. I think when you start to put 10, 15, 20 people in a house, and we've always said that we have a business, but the business has a mission. I wouldn't suggest running your business if you're going into a sober house the way we do, because it really doesn't make any money. But when you start to warehouse people, you start to put 4 people in a bedroom, 5 people in a bedroom, that starts, and I don't know what the solution to it is. Again, it's at a federal level, and states all across the country have been reluctant to challenge that because they've lost on that challenge. And so, having said that, I don't think I have anything good to say other than to you that MASH is trying to it's their first year with DPH funding, and in the the first few months, the state said they wanted, because they were giving us funding, they wanted 150 houses certified in the first 3 months. So now we're starting to decertify houses. In the last couple of months, houses have been decertified. Why? It's the second.
Well, and I think this is kind of the point. Like, how do we know this is a sober house? Challenge it. Say, hey, you're running a rooming house. Challenge it on zoning and make them prove that this is a sober house.
And that it's a good
What
location.
he's saying is a voluntary program with standards.
No, but his point is, how do we know, if they've never told us they're opening a sober house, how do we know it's a sober house? Why don't we try and shut it down
I get that
and let
it's
them
protected, but it's
tell
only
us?
protected if you can prove that it's a sober house.
What defines a sober?
Which I think means they gotta get certified or something.
There's no certification, no. There's no certification, but I like the thought that
Bring the challenge.
make them prove to us that they're a sober house.
Why sit back and be like, okay, you're a sober house, fine. Challenge it.
And that it's a good location. Because frankly, I don't think Gardner Road's a great location. There's no access to the T station, which means it's more difficult for these people to get around. It doesn't seem like there's anything that's necessarily a place where they can go for help additionally. It just seems just not effective in any way whatsoever.
Well, what you have is the difference between one that's, this sober house that's trying to go through the process, and the one on Gardner, which isn't. You know, and he's not trying to be certified or, you know, it's a difference in the houses.
Hi, everybody. We're still going. Go ahead, man.
So we know that the federal law's on our side, and we know that the regulations have not yet caught up. And we can argue about when Quincy knew or didn't know. But now we know, right? So we applaud the folks that have gone through the certification and uphold the standards and have folks living. But for the non-certified ones that we now know about, is the city going to provide any safeguards in the form of additional police patrols, in the form of emergency medical services who know where these houses are prepared to respond? So the scene like we saw on Grove Street the other day with someone dead on the street with a syringe hanging out of their arm at 12:15 on a sunny Friday isn't commonplace for us. So not to say that these things are related, but again, these are incidents that are happening for our neighborhoods. So are we able as the city of Quincy, as taxpayers, to expect some level of additional protection given unregulated homes within our residential neighborhoods?
We will certainly talk to the police department about some additional patrols in the area. That's not a problem. During the overnight hours, during the regular day, that's not going to be an issue. Some of these other bigger picture things, how do we get them regulated? I think is a bigger picture thing, and I think we have the legal team ready to go on that. We talked to them today about it.
That's what I wanted. So it does mean if we are looking for extra services, we're also looking at more money on our taxes.
No, we can handle the city.
More police patrols doesn't mean more money?
No, it doesn't, because it's allocation of resources. The police department has a certain amount of resources. They have a sector car in that area at all times. It's clearly just a matter of asking. And again, I don't want to speak for the police department. They do a terrific job in this city. We do not have. As I know we're not here for a positive reason in some ways, but a little bit of perspective that this city, the way it is, the way it has been for a very long time, does not have the kind of crime that cities of our size normally do. And that's in large part due to neighborhoods like yours and the Quincy Police Department and the commitment the city has made over, not my boss, but going back 20, 30 years, everyone has made a commitment to have proper police, proper fire, great schools, parks that you can go to, that sort of thing. It's very important. Any of that. But it's just allocation of resources for specifically sending someone out there. Tell the sector car, keep an eye on that house for the foreseeable future. End of story.
Are there any statistics? Sir, hold on a second. This fellow's had his hand up for a minute. I'll come back around, okay?
What is the mayor's office willing to do for the people up there whose assessments are between $600,000 to over $1 million? What are they willing to do for the constituents there that can't sell their house, that are paying $3,000 and $4,000 a year more than what they could sell them for?
There's a process through the assessor's office.
Yeah, and you're told, and you wind up filing for an abatement, and you're denied. And then I was told by the previous administration, who was the head assessor, that we don't have enough houses up there to judge yours by. So we're judging it by houses in Squantum, okay, that are waterfront. that aren't 2 houses away or 2 streets away from Home Depot?
I could certainly leave my card, and we could talk about getting with the assessor's office and making a determination
I
on
can
how
walk
they do
to
it.
City Hall with a half a
Outdoors.
dozen real estate brokers. It'll tell me what the property will sell for, and the city winds up charging you $300,000–$400,000 more.
And also, when someone tries to sell their house, they have to make, those new owners have to be aware that this solar house is in existence.
Sure. I understand the value issue gets a little complicated, but it is guided by state law. These folks that do the work, that do the assessments on the property, they don't just stick their thumb in the air and say, this is what the value is. We've seen it all across the city, especially in the single-family neighborhoods, where values are going up dramatically. Now, in my mind, and I know it's not music to ears, that should, if that's going to if there's going to be an effect, that should absolutely reflect on the value of your home. Now, we can argue whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Your value goes up, that's right, your taxes are going up because the value's up. Your value goes down. Well, if we end up in a situation where values are going down, in your neighborhood and every other neighborhood, we're in a much worse position than we are if your values are going up. That's just our...
If you're a young family, if you're a couple with a young family and you're going to move into an area and the broker discloses that and they see half a dozen trucks out front and cars and people coming and going, would you buy a house there?
It should absolutely reflect on the value.
Especially if they don't know who's going in and out there.
If they're not selling, if properties, because of that very reason, if the property's not selling what the market price is and the market price goes down, your value will reflect that.
But in the meantime, by the time that catches up, it's 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. But in the meantime, we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and the city, as Mr. Duca said, can't really do anything because of the federal guidelines. But you certainly can, and the mayor can, by directing the assessors to take care of those neighborhoods.
We can certainly have the assessors take a look at it and see what's available in terms of taking a look at that area. You're right about the assessments being a couple years off. That it takes a couple years for the true market value to reflect on your value. That's why this last year was the highest value that we've seen in 20, 30 years, because it's reflecting from 2 years ago. And this year we're going to see probably leveling it off a little bit, the value.
My neighbor's had his hand up.
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
How you doing? Are there any statistics available about increase in change in demographics or crime statistics, break-ins, cars being stolen, things gone missing? Is the police department allowed to generate any of that data so that we can monitor what's going on up on Gardner Road?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. You can probably do a test case. If we can find the location that sort of fits the model of what you folks, this area, and see, let's say it was 5 years ago, we can trace the calls in that area, and we can continue to trace the calls in this area.
Is there anything that we can do with that data when we acquire it? Or are we continued to be held responsible for the Disabilities Act that has no regulation? We have police regulations, we have housing regulations, but we have no regulations over the Disabilities Act. So we're kind of hamstringed right now, because if anything happens, God forbid, we still can't do anything because of the Disabilities Act and no regulation. So what do? What is your recommendation? I live at 160 Gardner Road. I've been there for years and years.
My
What do I do?
My recommendation tomorrow, and from tomorrow until whatever time, anytime you see something amiss, you call the police department. Anytime you see something amiss, you call City Hall. Keep updated. The counselor, our office. A little bit early in the meeting, I suggested that we could have our legal staff take a look at. Now, these are longer terms. This is not tomorrow.
I think it's safe to say that it's a pretty big concern of everybody in the room. I mean, that's a big elephant. What's going to happen, not to the value of our properties, what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to our kids, to our homes when we leave them? That's a big concern. And I think we have to set up a way to monitor it, and then something to do, some kind of an action plan that we have to have in place. Otherwise, we're just waiting for the sky to fall in. Then what do you do?
Understood.
Do I have to go to the Quincy Police Department and get a gun permit now?
It's not sober and clean people that break into your house. It's active drug addicts who need money for a fix.
I'll be right back.
Well, that's the difference of the two houses. Is, you know, and I've said this like 5 times, but you have someone here who's hoping to work with the community. The one that you have on Gardner Road, you don't. This woman told you the story about her son and the Globe spotlights here. I mean, this is, so I guess I'm trying to clarify his concern is they're not running a real sober house over there. You know?
That's right.
So go ahead, sir.
Right, my concern is, okay, I live on Gordon Street. I have one sober house across the street from me, and I have the one on Bennington. Now, the woman next to the Gordon Street is going to be selling her house, all right? Three-decker. Who's to say someone comes in, buys the house, and now that's a sober house? And now what do? Okay, if I ever move out of my neighborhood, what's going to happen to me? I'll never be able to sell a house.
Well, someone who wants to open a sober house may buy it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, can we do like a restriction of an area, like so many sober houses within a square area?
I don't believe so, Jay.
At this time, we can't regulate it any differently than any other single family.
Can we put a law in that says something? Can we put something in?
State law. Yeah.
Yeah, but then feds overrule state.
Start.
So we're done. It's like surrender. What do we do, surrender?
Is there some restriction that you can only have one within a certain area? There was at one time, like a mile.
So I could have one in my house?
No?
Yeah. How many spare rooms you got?
Go ahead. We're going to go back here and then come back up front.
What's your time frame to let us know what's actually going on in that house? We don't know what's really going on. We don't know.
Clarity, there's one in my house.
I think we do know. What's your time frame to let us know what's actually going on?
I could. I have 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, 3 half baths.
Come on, one conversation.
I have 50 people. Well, I can't even go there. Yeah. At least you got no trouble.
Mr. Duca was there today. Talked to the operator.
Brian, you gotta know.
I'm trying to follow the one conversation in the room.
You got a no-ending situation there. Don't be rude.
I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to listen to the person talk.
You can't hear anything in here.
I'm trying to listen to this.
Yeah.